What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and this is The Listener. This is directed by Steve Buscemi. So if you've been sleeping on this movie, I'm gonna throw that at you real quick. I'm gonna slap you in the face and be like, "Did you see Steve Buscemi's film this year? You did not." And he's got a fucking great cast behind this too. It stars Tessa Thompson. Now, that's an important definition there because there are a bunch of people that he got to do like phone voices that are notable. Rebecca Hall, I thought, especially considering her performance. I was in one of the Critics Guilds that I was in this year, uh, had a best, um, it's like a non-traditional performance. I can't think of the way that we phrased it. Basically for like voiceovers slash mocap performers, that kind of like hybrid. It was a hybrid performance, is what it was. And I loved Rebecca Hall so much over the phone in this that I was like, she should have been in my five for that. That's an interesting category that I've never really had to think about before, and I was having a hard time coming up with five spots for it. But now that I've seen, but I've already voted. So unfortunately, the listener wasn't submitted to anybody for any sort of consideration, which I kind of understand, but it's also kind of unfortunate because I've seen other movies submitted to me where I'm like, what the fuck is this? So yeah, I just wish the listener had been submitted to me. But yeah, we've also got, God, who else was in this? Casey Wilson was in this. Margaret Cho, uh, Logan Marshall Green. Yeah, there are actually quite a few people who call in and talk for a little while to Tessa Thompson, but she plays a crisis hotline operator. So people call her and just talk to her for a few minutes about whatever it is that's going on in their life, and they kind of move on to the next thing. And she just moves on. This movie doesn't really have a plot. I thought maybe this film would be sort of like Jake Gyllenhaal's film that he made, which name escapes me right now. It was on Netflix not that long ago. We've had movies like this before where somebody is on the phone and they get a call. There's also The Call with Halle Berry, although they actually go places and do things there, Halle Berry and Abigail Breslin. This is a little bit more of a chamber piece, like Locke, with Tom Hardy, or Buried with Ryan Reynolds, where you're just like in one location with one actor the whole time, and they drive the story. It's not even, it's not even like Moon with Sam Rockwell, where he was on screen the whole time, and there was just more for him to do. It's one of those things where I didn't get audio description for this, but at the same time, it's one of those weird things where it's like I have a really hard time using the term unwatchable for this because it's Tessa Thompson having phone conversations. Like there isn't really a cinematic quality to it. The cinematic quality would be in Tessa's, I guess, facial reactions, but she has to keep sort of a very neutral thing. Like she's kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like if people tell her these sort of like she hears some sort of disturbing things, it's I've seen it billed as a horror movie. It's not. It's not a horror movie by any stretch of the imagination, unless the visual here is that Tessa Thompson is like chopping up a body while calmly talking to people on the phone. It's not a horror movie. There's nothing here. There's nobody who calls her, "What's your favorite scary movie?" None of that. Um, but no, it's interesting because it explores it explores so many different facets of crisis and what it means to be in crisis. And after the loss of that Steve Buscemi has experienced in his life, I find it fascinating that he directs a film like this. That this is a project that he felt drawn toward, and that he wanted to explore this um, more, sort of like some sort of like catharsis for him. So I think I actually really like The Listener. It doesn't have a plot, and I'm gonna every 100 movies or so, I find a movie that doesn't have audio description, and I grade it anyway because it's like um I I I feel like I'm insulting somebody's intelligence by calling it unwatchable. Do you know? Like I feel like I'm saying you would not be able to understand this movie, but it's literally Tessa Thompson in a room, like she's at home. Like you can tell she's not in a call center. There's no one else around. Like there aren't these other busy voices. There aren't the kind of sounds that you would have from somebody who's in like a workplace environment. She's just quietly sitting there taking call after call after call, and that's what drives the movie is are these conversations between these different people. And yeah, we could have audio description on this, and I'm sure it would point out some of the choices Tessa's making. Maybe she takes a drink, or I don't know, stands for a few minutes, sits down and then sits back down. But these movies, they just sort of have limited motion. um, I would say the same thing. Actually, having seen Ryan Reynolds's Buried, there are very few things that you could possibly describe in that movie. Very few things. He's basically he basically can't move for 90 minutes. There are like maybe like three things that you could describe in that movie, and that's about it. So, yeah, I think I got it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think I was picking up what Steve was putting down, because it's so phone conversation oriented. The performances are sort of vocally oriented anyway. So it's really reliant upon the tone and the voice. There are Every other actor who's not Tessa Thompson in this movie is delivering a performance basically over the phone. So you don't see them. So I mean, their whole performance is not able to be audio described anyway. It's all in how they talk. It's like listening to podcasts. So yeah, it's a really interesting movie that I liked a lot more than I thought I was going to, considering it has it is literally, I get the title, but it's also kind of the most mundane title. Like it's a title that you could easily just get lost and be like, The Listener? What? I mean, like I think there was a TV series called The Listener at some point, and there's of course Robin Williams is The Night Listener. So it's just almost so generic that you forget that it exists. Um, but it does star Tessa Thompson and it's directed by Steve Buscemi, and those are like two reasons why you should see this. Uh, it's not a long movie because it can't overstay its welcome because it has no plot. It's just phone calls. So that's another thing, is that I think it was under 90 minutes, and which is about the right amount of time for you to be able to not get exhausted by the lack of plot and realizing there is no plot, especially when you get towards the end of the movie and you're like, oh, well, there's no great last phone call that she's going to get where she's like, I know who you are. I'm outside your house. I found you. Like none of that. No, it's about her just having these conversations. And I found it sort of like uniquely interesting and fascinating. Not the best movie of the year, but certainly an underrated gem from this year that has not gotten enough attention. Um, so, yeah, it's possible the audio description is I would have bumped the grade up a little bit, but yeah, I don't. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna give this one the one pass card of the year, I guess. And I'm just gonna give The Listener a B plus. I'm not gonna try to insult anybody's intelligence and say you're not gonna follow this without audio description, because I think everyone can follow this without audio description. Not that I, for a second, am stopping to advocate, like, we deserve audio description on everything, but the product crafted here, I would not stop you from I'm not even gonna try to suggest that this has any sort of, like, challenge in picking up what this film is putting down. Um, and you know what? I mean, maybe there's always that exception to the rule. And Steve Buscemi found a thing where it's like, do you want to listen to people talk on the phone for 90 minutes? Cool. There's not really anything cinematic about it, which is what kind of makes it a small movie that feels like an indie, why you haven't heard about it, why it's just floating on streaming services. But I think it's worth people's time. I really enjoyed the conversations and I thought they were really well written, and the dialogue back and forth, the give and take between Tessa and whoever she was talking to, I thought was really solid. So I'm surprised by the movie. Anyway, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the other side.